and then in the minors, and over in Europe for 9 years. I was an assistant coach at Miami when I retired, and in 2013, 2014 came to Indy and started out just directing the travel program, which was only 7 teams at the time. And over the past 7 years, we've managed to bring everybody together, all the hockey, all the rinks, all the teams, and to become what's now the Junior Fuel. Tell me, you want to give a little background on yourself?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Just gonna put this down right here. So my name's Tommy Schegler. As Derek said, I do work with the Fort Wayne organization year-round as a board member, and then I am part of the Indiana Youth Hockey Committee, which is really made up of leaders of all the different 8 organizations around the state. And we kind of came together right around the same time that Derek and I started talking about the Indiana Elite. That whole group also started coming together, which kind of resulted because of COVID in the Indiana League, which I'm sure some of you guys played in this year, and then the state championship that we just had at the beginning of the month. So we think there's a lot of exciting things happening inside of some of the projects that we're working on. My background is basically just on the administrative side. So I know Derek said a bunch of nice things about myself and my wife, but Derek and his openness to working with the entire state, being the biggest and largest organization in the state, really helps make the whole collaboration work. I try not to say too many nice things about him too often, but the collaboration has been really awesome to come together and really just talk about how can we make the overall level of play in the state of Indiana something that people that are in the state of Indiana take pride in and want to actively work together to try to make it a better product. Excuse me. So that gets me to Indiana Elite. So why Indiana Elite? Derek talked a little bit about it already. We have great players in the state. We have limited opportunities for high level of play in the state. By allowing an opportunity like Indiana Elite, it allows for the higher end top players in the state the opportunity to stay at home and still develop with a good balance of life inside of their own home organizations, but also get the taste of a higher end level of competition that allows them to continue to develop on the ice in game situations. So that's really, when you look at the mission, it's that being able to stay at home, being able to develop at home, but also getting that extra taste of that extra competition on top. So strong Indiana players add to the strength of each local organization, thereby elevating the entire state overall. So that's kind of what I said at the beginning. We keep our top players playing in our home organizations, and I think it was in some of the literature that we already sent out to this group. But one of the prerequisites for playing on an Indiana Elite team is that you have to be rostered with one of the 8 Indiana organizations. So that's why we have our tryouts, which I'll get into in a little while, a little bit later on in the year, because all the tryouts for the 8 organizations across the state have to happen. The player has to be rostered on one of those teams, and then you qualify to be able to try out for Indiana. Okay, so so right now we have the 2010s. We just started this past year. The reason that we started with the 2010s, that second year of 10U that you guys are all getting ready to enter into, is when AAA hockey starts to be offered. Historically, it is when most of the organizations in our state have seen players leave for other organizations outside of the state. So that was why we started with the 2010s. The idea being that we'll just start to fill in the years underneath. We're not ruling out the possibility that 2008s or 2006s, I'm just making it up. I guess 2006s would be too old now, but my point is that we're not ruling it out that a group of people could come forward and say, hey, we really want to lead one of the higher ages. But the feeling of our state committee was a lot of those players that are the high-end players in those birth years above our kids' ages right now have already left the state, and it'd just be harder to get them to come back we started at the bottom, we can kind of build it up from there. And then my last one, I think, just kind of spells out, so this kind of spells out what things will look like for this team. So we have tryouts, as I said, all players have to be rostered. So I think South Bend is usually the last in the cycle, and they do their tryouts sometime in August. So we will do our tryouts sometime after South Bend's. This team doesn't have weekly practices, so getting the tryout in, really early so that you can get to start practicing isn't as big of a need. So we'll have it end of August, beginning of September, somewhere in there. There will be 3 development clinics throughout the course of the year. One here, one in Fort Wayne, one in South Bend. And each one of the ones that we've done with the 2010s, we've been able to get a guest coach to come in for the day, teach the kids. In Fort Wayne, we had the Comets coach come in and teach the kids for the day. Getting ready to go to South Bend. They're having one of the Notre Dame assistants come in and work with the kids. When we were here with Derek, he had a college coach come in and work with the kids. So those are really high intensity days. They're usually on a Sunday, all day long. We've done video sessions with the kids. We've given them talks, different stuff each time. So one of those in the fall, one in mid-season, and then one in the spring. 3 AAA tournaments. So one in the regular season, not locking ourselves into exactly when that's going to be. I can tell you for the 2010s, we did it at the end of January. So we did some friendly games before Christmas. I think we played in 4 of them before Christmas, that November, December range. And then we played in our first tournament in January. We're playing in our second tournament next weekend. And then we're playing in our last tournament a couple weeks after spring break in the middle of April. I mentioned the friendly games. So that four games is what we'll shoot for. In both of our instances, it came in a doubleheader fashion where in both instances we actually came to this rink and hooked up with some of the teams that were playing the Fuel AAA team, and we were just able to kind of come up with that. So that kind of gives you an overview of the purpose of the program and then what this particular team's schedule will look like. Are there any questions for me, non-hockey, kind of more administrative related, before I hand it over to Derek? All right, take it away, sir.
So when I came to Indy, like I grew up in, I won a national championship at the AAA level, lost 2 in overtime in Bams and U18. So I was really lucky to grow up with really good players around me and an expectation to win. Going into the rink, knowing whether we're playing a team from Toronto, Detroit, Boston, I knew we could go in and we expected to win. And that was one of the most frustrating parts of coming to Indiana, starting to work with Indy players, and seeing it throughout the state. We don't have a lot of parents that have ever played hockey before. And most of you played basketball, football, baseball, and there's that confidence in those other sports, but for whatever reason, when we come into the rink, when we go into tournaments in Detroit and Chicago, it's kind of like, oh, we're happy to be here. We kept it within a couple goals, and that's a win for us because it's Indiana. But we can be so much better, and that's one of the reasons I was really excited about this idea, is that we have more than enough high-level talent in the state to go in. I mean, we tied Little Caesars with the 2010 team. Actually, we tied 3 games that weekend. It would have been nice to get a W, but there are enough good players in the state to compete, and as the kids move up, because honestly, and we're going to talk about this, we need to keep the kids going in the right direction mentally, because nothing really matters. Like, your hockey career is not going to be in jeopardy because of making or not making a team until you're 17, 18, 19 years old. And how old are you guys? 9, 10?
9, 10.
You've got almost 10 years before you're going to have that real pressure. So the goal of this, and what I'm hoping to convey to everybody today is, you guys are all better than you think. You're all capable of playing as high a level as anybody. There's a Carmel, Indiana player that just got called up to the New York Islanders 2 days ago. Grew up in Carmel, stayed in Indy until he was 18 years old. Played at Miami, captain of Miami, got his first call up the other day. Hopefully going to play some games for the Islanders this weekend. It's happening. There's a Chicago Blackhawks draft pick from South Bend. Anybody know who that is? Nobody? So that's a problem too. Nobody knows who these kids are. There's lots of them, and we're going to go through a bunch of those names. But to start off here, these are the registered youth players in all these given countries. Canada's obviously number 1. USA is number 2 with 300,000. But the interesting part are the ones as we go down here, and these Sweden, Finland, Czech Republic. Sweden is putting players in the NHL every year. Like a quarter of the first round of the NHL draft are Swedes. They have the same amount of youth players as Minnesota, the state of Minnesota. Finland, same thing. There are Finns on every team in the NHL. Only 39,000 players. In India, in 2018, these numbers are aging, but this is from 3 years ago. There are almost 4,000 youth players in the state of Indiana. So to put it in further perspective, Latvia, the 15th largest hockey playing country in the world, put a team in the 2014 Olympics and the 2015 and 2016 World Championships. They only have 1,700 youth players. Slovenia, the 16th, again, put a team in the 2014 Olympics, the 2015 World Championships. Almost 3% of their registered players played on the Olympic team. That's pretty crazy. Let that sink in for a minute. 807 youth players in Slovenia. We have 4 times that amount just in the state of Indiana. So when I talk about that mindset, like the difference is the culture, the mindset of those kids, the Swedes, the Finns, Latvians, and Slovenians. There's a belief that you can do it. And that's my biggest goal of this program, is to get all of our like-minded families together, all the top kids in the state, and have that belief, like, you can do it. I don't think there's going to be an Indiana Olympic team anytime soon, but we can put plenty of players in Division I college in the NHL. It's happening. There are players in every age group that are going to play Division I hockey. Players in this room, they're going to play Division I hockey and maybe the NHL. And we'll talk more about it later, but the crazy part, and the one thing, the biggest lesson I've learned is probably not the players you all would pick out from our first 2 practices. It's important to keep the kids going in the right direction and maintain that positive mindset for exactly that reason. So these are the 2015 IIHF is the international governing body for hockey, the rankings. So this was a little depressing. The USA were second in numbers in hockey players, and we're 5th in the national and the world rankings. And these are all the teams that played in the 2016 World Championships, which is the 16 best hockey playing countries in the world, and it rotates every year. And these teams were all in the 2016 World Championships. And we've got more youth hockey players than 4 of those countries. So when you tell me it's a numbers thing, it's not a numbers thing, it's a mindset, it's a belief thing. And we need to change that mindset. The families of the top players in the state in this room need to change that mindset that we can do it. These kids can do it. Like the only hurdle is not competition, it's not coaches, it's just mindset. And I've seen it play out over and over and over. So there are a lot of development myths, and as you get into this AAA world, this crazy world, and you're going to start being pulled in all kinds of different directions, biggest myth that we need to dispel is that you have to excel early and play at the highest level possible to play Division I hockey, to play in the NHL. Everybody, you guys know who Nick Lidstrom is? He retired probably before he started watching hockey, but he's one of the 3 best defensemen all time in the NHL. He was drafted top 3 defensemen all time, ever. He was drafted in the 3rd round. So there were 2 whole rounds of defensemen picked ahead of him. And he didn't get drafted in his first 2 years of eligibility for the draft. He got drafted as a 20-year-old in the 3rd round. You can get drafted in the NHL when you're 18. And it's not like other sports where you have to opt in and quit your college program or your youth team. You can get drafted playing anywhere. They passed him over for 2 years and then took him in the third round. He's probably the second, or arguably the second or third best defenseman to ever live. Isn't that pretty crazy? Third round pick. Question? Yes. Of the top 20, so the USA Hockey has this program called the National Team Development Program, where they go out and they select who they think are the top 20 16-year-olds in the country. They all move to Ann Arbor, they train together, they play in the USHL, they play Division I teams, and that's their grooming for the future Olympic team. They want as many NHLers, as many Olympians as they can. And of the top 20 American-born scorers in the NHL, this was in 2018, only 5 of them were picked for the NTDP. That means the smartest minds in USA Hockey were wrong about the other 15 best American-born players in the world, highest scorers. And that's a 16. That's not far off of playing in the NHL. They couldn't pick out the 20 best 16-year-olds in the country that turned into NHL players. So the WHL, the Western Hockey League, it's a junior league for all of Western Canada. That includes Manitoba, and I'm not going to embarrass myself by trying to name all the rest of them, but everything west of Manitoba. They have a draft for Bantams, 14U players, to protect them for their junior league. The junior league is from 16 to 20 years old. It's all the best players in Western Canada that don't want to go to American college, which is a lot, majority of them. Jerome McGinley, Milan Lucic, Shane Doan, and Dan Hamhuis, all Canadian Olympians. Olympians, like there's only 20 of them every 4 years. All Canadian Olympians weren't picked as the top 14-year-olds in all of Western Canada. And there's a couple hundred players drafted every year. That's pretty crazy. All those guys, future best players in Canadian hockey history, weren't seen as the top 150 14-year-olds in Western Canada. Henrik Lundqvist, you guys know who he is, goalie? No? New York Rangers is sitting out this year for health reasons. One of the best goalies, Team Sweden Olympian, every time he's been eligible, was a 7th round draft pick. There were 21 goalies picked in his draft ahead of him. So the scouts were wrong about the 21 ahead of him. They picked him just in that draft. 13 never played an NHL game. But he's the best goalie ever to come out of Sweden, one of the best goalies in the NHL for the last 15 years. Michael Ferland, you probably don't know that name, but he's still playing in the NHL from Western Canada, played house league hockey until he was 15 years old. House league, not AA, like house league, like played in his own rink against other local kids. His first year at AAA when he was 16 years old, 45 goals in 44 games. So he went from house league at 15 to an NHL draft pick at 18. And at the age of 22, played 29 games for the Calgary Flames. So from 15 to 22 in 7 years, the time between when these guys are going to be 15, he went from house league to the NHL. Zdeno Chara, everybody knows who he is, right? No?
No, I actually don't.
He's 44 years old playing in the NHL right now. Yeah. He's like 6'9". He's the captain of Olympic teams, captain of the Boston Bruins for 2 Stanley Cups. He's from this small town in Slovakia. He was cut from the top local team when he was 16 years old. 16. Like, you think you have a pretty good idea of how good somebody's going to be when they're 16? Somebody that would play until they're 44 years old in the NHL. He was cut from his little local team in Slovakia at 16 years old. Until you met me today, did anybody know who Derek Edwardson was? No? No. So I grew up in Chicago. I played up from the time I was 11 years old, and at the time there were only 2 AAA teams in Chicago. I played up on the older AAA team my whole youth experience. And these were teams that were competing and winning national championships. I played with the older kids. And I don't want to explain why, but there are guys that you probably know or should know. Craig Anderson, goalie for Ottawa Senators. Brett Ledda, who retired a handful of years ago, won a Stanley Cup with Detroit. They were both my age Brett Leveton won 2 Stanley Cups with Detroit. They were both my age. They never played up growing up. They never made those top teams. But Craig Anderson's turning 40 this year, still playing in the NHL. Brett Leveton won 2 Stanley Cups with Detroit, was a regular, played like 800 games. So everything that you're taking, or some people are taking super seriously for the next 10 years, everything people are worried about, playing on certain teams, playing in certain places, playing at certain levels, I can tell you from personal experience, it doesn't matter when real things matter. And I love to say this, and nobody believes me until it's too late, but you haven't accomplished anything in hockey until you don't have to pay for hockey anymore. There's going to be plenty of people trying to get you to pay a bunch of money to go all over the country to do all this stuff, and it's not an accomplishment until you don't have to pay for it anymore. Because until then, it's all people just trying to take as much money as they possibly can and tell you, we're going to put you here, we're going to expose you here, we're going to do this and that. It's nonsense. All of it. It really is. The most important part, we're going to talk about it later, is how much these kids love to play hockey and how excited they're going to be when they're 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, when it gets really hard. That's when they're putting in the time every day and training and off-season stuff. And that's when a lot of kids are like, I don't want to do this anymore. That's when the kids that in this room that you don't think are going to play at the highest level, if they fall in love with it, they start putting that work in when it matters, they go like this. And a lot of the kids that were already up here, they start to lose interest, they didn't love it that much, they don't continue to climb. So it's really important to make sure the kids love it, and that's the only thing that's important right now. Did any of those players play in the SEH, PMP, AAA, SHL when they were 14? Who cares? Nobody knows. Development, it's a marathon. Anyone want to take a stab at the newest league available? Super elite, high performance, mega exposure, pro prospect, quadruple A showcase athlete. They're having tryouts in a couple weeks. It's $12,000 to play. I'm joking. Well, anybody heard of Mason Yops? No? It's okay if you haven't. I'm kind of surprised that any of you have. Mason grew up in Speedway, right here. Played youth hockey in Indy all the way till he was 8. Played 2 years of U18 hockey. Played 4 years in the USHL, and we'll talk about. We won't hit on that today, but for the players that make the team, we'll have more meetings like this to explain everything that's coming way down the line. Didn't commit to college until he was 20 years old. So he took 3 years off of high school, played in the USHL till he was 21. Went to Ohio State, Hobey Baker finalist. So the Hobey Baker is just like the Heisman for hockey, the best player in the country, wins that every year. Well, he was a captain, finalist for the Hobey, final 10 players, undrafted because his draft year was 2 years before he even committed to a school. Signed last spring signed with the Islanders. Is on his 2nd year contract. He's been playing in the AHL. He's my size. Like, you wouldn't tell the difference, but he was one of the leading scorers in college hockey for 4 years, captain, fantastic kid, but took the slow path. Like, I've talked to some of his teammates and coaches when he was here as a kid. Nobody at 14, 15, 16 years old, they all say he was an incredibly hard worker, super passionate, at the rink all day, every day. Nobody would have said he'd sign an NHL contract and be one of the best players in college hockey. And that's what everybody says. Grant Hutton, player, he just got called up to the New York Islanders 3 days ago from Carmel. Born and raised, same thing. Played at the time the AAA program here was called the Junior Ice. Played all the way through 18U AAA. You're going to hear that if you're any good, you got to go play wherever, Chicago, Detroit, Boston, Toronto, when you're 15 years old. These last 2 guys, both on NHL contracts right now, stayed in Indy through their 2nd year of U18 hockey. And in the junior hockey world, we're not going to talk about that too much today. There's the USHL, and then there's the NAHL, which is what everybody plays before they go to college hockey. Another guy didn't make the USHL, took 3 years of playing in the North American League before he committed to a school. He went to Miami too. He's got a special place in my heart. He was a captain, one of the top scorers in the country as a 24-year-old senior. Again, undrafted, signed with the New York Islanders days after Mason Yops did. Called up to New York, he's going to get his first NHL game any day now. He's on the taxi squad right now, but he's going to get in. Anybody know Fort Wayne guys? You know who this is?
No.
You should.
Oh, yeah.
Karch Bachman,
Oh, yeah.
Fort Wayne kid.
What?
Ended up playing at Culver, another Miami guy. Well, there is an Indiana pipeline to Miami in case anybody's interested. Playing the USHL. Again, 20-year-old commit, played in Miami. Now an NHL draft pick by the Florida Panthers. Wolcottville. How far is that from Fort Wayne? Close, right?
Like half hour north.
Aiden Folk from Westfield, Indiana. Played AAA here through his 16U year. He played games for the U.S. national team. He was one of the kids that did get recognized early because he's a monster of a young man, kind of a physical freak. But played in the USHL at 16 years old. He was the opposite end of the spectrum of those guys. So we've got it all in Indiana. 3-year USHL player, was a captain, and the Kurt Hammer Award winner, which goes to you have to be a good player, but you get it because you're a leader in the community, you do lots of community service, good grades, just a good person. And he won that award for the entire USHL, which is a big deal. Right now he is a sophomore, junior. I think he's a sophomore at Western Michigan.
He's a freshman this year.
Is he a freshman?
Yeah.
Freshman this year. But he's doing well, playing a lot, scoring points. Fantastic young man that's done it all right and is more than willing to help out in the community with the young kids. South Bend guys, you know who this is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Played Rovers youth, just like all of you. Another one, made the USA, NTDP. His dad's the assistant coach at Notre Dame. Currently playing at Notre Dame. Drafted last summer by the Blackhawks. You guys watch that? That's a big deal. Born and raised South Bend.
He is a brother of Graham Slaggert too.
That's right. Brother of Graham Slaggert, also playing at Notre Dame. Question? Or just a comment? He was playing with the rubber man.
Oh.
Okay, so a couple years ago, I was sitting in church and they put this image up there in a religious context. I thought that is perfect for my next hockey meeting. And I tuned out for the rest of the sermon and figured out how I could apply this to these kids' path. Because it's perfect. It's an escalator at the top. In church, it wasn't NHL career at the top. But the escalator's going down. And it's working against you. And everybody's born with a certain amount of athletic ability. And so what you're born with determines where you start. But not even closely determines where you finish. Like I know players that started out with NHL draft potential, physical characteristics, that didn't even get close. They went straight down from the time they were 10 years old. Just because they weren't into it, they didn't love it, because the parents steered them in the wrong direction. Whatever happens. I also know players that were born probably with about this much natural ability, playing in the NHL. My roommate from college, Andy Green, played 800 games for New Jersey. He's now with the Islanders. He's about to pass his 1,000th NHL game. He played 4 years of high school hockey in Detroit. Was a late commit to Miami, 20-year-old freshman in Miami. He's made about $30 million playing hockey now. Nobody as a kid would have said that guy's going to play 1,000 games in the NHL. I was his roommate for 3 years at school. I wouldn't have said he played 1,000 games in the NHL. No way. But he was probably born with the natural ability right about here. But he climbed, worked against that treadmill. So there's a couple things I want to put it in perspective because we're right here. Right now. And if you sprint up that escalator for the next couple of years, there is no chance you have the energy to continue climbing 10 years from now, because 10 years from now is just right here. you still have that whole thing to climb. And if you get so excited, and part of it is the kids burning out, a lot of it is you guys burning out. Just, I see so many families, we kind of have it backwards in Indiana because now is when all the excitement, when I have these meetings with our 14, 15, 16 parents, about a third of you show up. And most of you are on the phones like this, or like, when do I write my check? Are you done? We've heard it all. But this is when the excitement is, and this is when everybody's super eager. Yeah, let's do this tournament, let's do that camp, let's do that clinic. We're gonna go to Calgary for a tournament, we're gonna go to Toronto for a skating coach. And you guys burn out doing that. One, you run out of money, or two, you're just like, I don't want it. We have so many families at the 15, 16 level, like, all right, now it's time to go. It's 16 AAA, scouts are in the stands, this is important. They're like, I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to drive to Detroit every other weekend. I don't want to go to Chicago every other weekend for games. I'm over it. And the parents essentially convince the kids, we're gonna give up on the dream, but that's when the stuff really starts to matter. So you don't want to be sprinting up that S. It's got to be a steady, gradual climb, and there's a long way to climb from here. There are some things you can start doing to start climbing. Little stuff. How many of you stick handle a golf ball or a puck at home every week?
I can't.
Not every week.
How many of you shoot pucks at home or at the rink? I know South Bend, the ice box has a shooting area. Fort Wayne has a shooting area. How many of you guys shoot pucks every week? Those are a couple things that everybody can do. And I can tell on the ice who really loves to play, because they're the ones that can stick handle and shoot, because you can do that on your own, by yourself. There are plenty of other distractions out there, and I think the moral of the story is to make sure we put things into perspective. That's why we've created this team, to give you a little taste of what you need, hopefully satisfy, scratch those itches, and put these kids in situations to build that confidence, to play the top teams from Chicago and Detroit and say, I can do this. We're going in the right direction. And the one thing that I'm excited about the 2010 group is that already we've only played 4 weekends of games together. Our competitive level has already gone from here to here. Like, we got our butts kicked against the Fury the first time we played them, but a month later we played right with Little Caesars, a top 20 team in the country. And I saw the light bulb go off in the kids and the parents' eyes. Hey, we can do this. Like, there's not, everybody puts their skates on the same way. We just don't have 200 kids coming to tryouts, but that doesn't matter. There are players in every age group that are going to play high-level hockey and college and pro hockey. We just need to make sure we stay excited, do the right things, and for both players and parents. That's about it. Any questions? You guys, oh, the one thing I forgot to talk about, it's really important to set high goals. Because the one thing I learned as a player and after playing, you're never going to achieve something that you don't expect to happen. Like, if you set your goal, like I had a Pee Wee team about 6 years ago, had everybody write down their individual goals, and I had one player say he wants to be an NHL All-Star. And guess what? That player is he just turned 16. He had 7 Division I teams call him on January 1st, the first day they were allowed to. And he's gone to visit the NTDP. He might be one of the top 20 16-year-olds in the country. His goal was to be an NHL All-Star, not just play in the NHL. I had another player who wrote down his all-time career goal was to play AAA in Chicago. And guess what? He got that goal, and that is going to be as high as he's going to go. So you guys need to be watching college hockey. South Bend guys, you should be going to every Notre Dame game that you possibly can. Fort Wayne kids, watch the Comets. Indy kids, watch the Fuel. We're really close to Miami. We're really close to Western Michigan, Ohio State. Those are all big-time Division I programs with NHL players on their roster. Go up to see a Hawks game. Go up to see a Blue Jackets game. Okay, so I need to take a poll. Whose favorite team is the Blackhawks in here? Whose favorite team is the Blue Jackets? One. Who's favorite team? We got some Detroit fans. Any Red Wings fans? I know it's tough right now. One diehard, I like it. Nashville? St. Louis? Who do you guys like in the NHL? Toronto. Who, Canucks? That's awesome. You guys need to watch NHL and college and pro hockey as much as you can, because if that's where you want to be, you got to see how they do it. Go to their practices, talk to them, beg them for a stick. All right? That's really important. And parents, it's really important to get these kids in those rinks, around those players, just to set those expectations. That's one of the biggest things here in Indy. I know I've gotten to know a lot of the families. There isn't that, we don't have a lot of diehard parents that are fans, and that can work against your players. It's got to be more than just dropping them off at the rink. You have to give them those outlets to see where they want to go, to get to know where they want to, if that's what they want to do. If you guys want to be baseball players or artists or musicians, that's cool too. But be around the people at the level where you want to go. That's really important. That's all I got. Any questions? Players, any questions? Think about your goals. I want one homework assignment. I want you all to go home and write down your ultimate hockey goal and draw a picture of you in that uniform. All right? You guys got that?
Yeah.
Draw a picture of you, write down where you want to go, draw a picture of you in that uniform, put it up on your wall, and take a picture of it. So you always have it. Make it your phone background if you have phones. When you do get a phone, make it your phone background. Question?
Is there anything higher than the NHL All-Star?
The Olympics. U.S. Olympic team.
Big brain up here.
There you go. I like it. Parents, any questions about the program, about what we're talking about?